Okay, so the last video went very long because I got distracted and I left it just sitting here for a while. And then I forgot I was recording. So I'm going to be clipping it or maybe deleting it. I don't know. Anyway, so where we are now is I have built, just in case, I'm just going to do a quick overview. Um, our limiting factor here is power, and power required building some nuclear fuel. And I spent a whole bunch of time trying to work out how to build the fuel properly. And in the process, I actually made an error in my math. I multiplied by 10 twice instead of once. So I was ending up building not just enough nuclear fuel for 10 or 20 power facilities, which is what I wanted, but 10 times that much. Now, the actuality is that we don't need that much. So let me do a quick review of the planned build here. You can see that I have requested, this is actually the Kirk McDonald website, and this request isn't to build factories, it's to build nuclear power plant cycles. So what I said was, if I had 200 nuclear reactors, which is 20 times what we currently have, what would I need to feed that? Anything else I built, I didn't get the full cycle. For instance, if I just said, please build me 60 uranium cells per minute, it wouldn't take into account the recycling of the used fuel cells. But doing this gets the whole cycle. It also means that I'm not multiplying and dividing by 10 a lot in my head, which is what you have to do because the recipe for uranium fuel cells produces 10. And I did that twice. So I started noodling around with the numbers and putting 4 productivity modules in the assembling machine that builds the fuel cuts our ultimate resource requirement almost in half. I'm not sure what the exact ratio is. I didn't work it out. We have 150 machines, and we really only need 30 of them. Notice I don't even have modules in here. So if at some point in the future we wanted to scale up to, even a more massive number of factories, more massive number of reactors, just dropping speed beacons in the mining drills here would do it. So we're importing sulfuric acid and an iron plate from the base, which is just to our south. This is the uranium mine that we set up a long time ago, which is right near the base. We centrifuge it. We only need 3 centrifuges as long as they are surrounded by beacons with speed modules and speed modules themselves. That's good. The centrifuging will hand us 0.7% of our output is going to be the hot nuggets. The rest is going to be cold. So to a first order, this turns out uranium, basic uranium, cold uranium, with some hot uranium leavened in. Then we go up to this one. We get Covarex. Covarex will take in a net of 2. It would want 5 cold uranium input, and when it's done, it sends 2 of them up. And same thing with the hot. It wants 40 hot in, and it gives 41 hot out. So really what we have is a catalytic system where we maintain 40 hot nuggets and 3 cold nuggets in the machine, and our net transaction is to turn 3 cold nuggets into 1 hot nugget. And the weird thing about it is you don't actually retain the catalyst in the machine. It gets output. So that output has to be cycled back to the input. And there's a whole bunch of ways of making it fancy so that when you output your 41, the 40 that you output first or last immediately comes back to you. And I had enough hot nuggets that I decided just to do it the simple way and let the machines maintain not 40 but 80 inputs, and have the box feeding them always have at least 40 more in it. So we're tying up a bunch of extra hot nuggets just in this process. So essentially we're admitting that we have a larger requirement for catalysts. That's fine. And then the output of all of this, so we've got 3 machines and 1 machine. Well, we really have 4 and 4. Goes to this assembly machine, which combines the hot nuggets, 1 hot nugget, 19 cold nuggets, and some iron to make a fuel cell. There we go. And again, I've put productivity modules in here to lower our, well, not so much lower the amount of inputs as to increase our yields. But the net effect is that since we are seeking a specified yield, this machine will run less often because the productivity will kick in and provide some of the products. And the net effect is that this is just over half of what we needed. And again, we're gonna beacon that. So what do we actually have built? Let's turn off that window. And we have our original mine. We've now replaced all this. No more belts here. All this outputs into provider chests. We have these chests here which will collect any spare stuff that's left over. For example, when I have my robots delete the old array, all of that had to go somewhere. Now, I believe that when a robot comes to pick up the ore, it's going to preferentially pull it out of the yellow stuff. And if it doesn't, well, then this will sit here forever, and eventually I will shoot it with a gun or something. So we pull it in here. These guys, well, let's actually go back to uranium processing. I need to actually be there to show you the recipe. Dum-da-dum-da-dum. And yeah, I will not be turning on the mini map. I will have to go to the main map if I want mapping. Come on. There we go. So there's my train. I always turn on those train paths because it's just too useful. And we'll put this on manual so that manual so I can hop back in when I need it. So circuits. This guy is going to centrifuge the inputs whenever this C signal is set. So elsewhere I'll have logic that turns on the centrifuges. And when that's enabled, I will be sending my hot nuggets and cold nuggets out to those buckets. Likewise, we've got our Covarex machines, and they are set up to output their stuff to a steel box, and it goes from there into this requester. And the requester is set to maintain at least 10 at all times, so it will request uranium-235 from elsewhere if it runs low. This should really only happen when we're starting it initially, but it could happen later on if somebody comes by and digs those out. So this loop will cause the machine to run. And this guy says, if we have more than 50 uranium-235 in my input chest, so if this chest gets above 50, which means the 40 that will be cycled back in, plus 1, plus the 10, so we want the 40 plus the 10. If we get plus 1 on there, that will lift it out. And the stack size there is 1. This could easily just be a purple inserter. In fact, I can substitute in a purple inserter like that without loss of anything. There. And that will cause this chest and this chest to make uranium-235 available to the rest of the system. And when that gets over some threshold, which our logic is going to look at, then this K signal will go to 0. So K will be high to enable the Covarex process. The idea of that is that we want to enable the centrifuging and the Covarex as necessary to keep enough cold nuggets and hot nuggets in the system so that we can make fuel. The next stage is fuel reprocessing. And it's important that no matter what happens, as fuel comes in for reprocessing, it gets handled. And these reprocess in batches of 5. And it's not clear to me why this has not moved this in. It should have preloaded that. Clearly I am using filter inserters wrong. Yes. Or I could use the filter inserter and set it. That's the other thing I like to do is with filter inserters is use them to document what the input is, especially for processes like this that don't run very often. And the output of this is going to be uranium-238. Like that. And it's very important for our outputs not to sit in a box here. I do want them to be used, so we're going to kick it out. And hopefully when we kick it out, it will end up here in one of these 4 boxes, which have the logistics filter set, and will feed into these guys by preference, because as usual, it should be picking up from yellow before it picks up from red. Equivalently, we could have put yellow over here if I trusted it. The other thing I'm doing is I'm putting the yellow close, so if I'm wrong about the logic, if it picks from the close box instead of the yellow box, this will still work. And of course, if I'm really, really wrong, and the bot happens to pick up from wherever is closer to where it lands, then we may end up running the cold nuggets in from the centrifuges rather than here. But bear in mind, we're turning the centrifuges on and off based on a network condition, which can include these guys. So, and finally, these guys over here actually making the fuel. We are going to collect up the cold nuggets and the hot nuggets and some iron and make the fuel. And the fuel will build up in these guys as much as it can. What I'd like to do now is have displays of the other 2 things that are important here. First of all, how much fuel is pending reprocessing. And second of all, how many fuel rods we actually have available to us. And that's wrong, because these should be showing up in the network. And I cannot tell from that display what is going on. It should be about, okay, that's 500, so we should have 1,000 fuel rods. And looking at 1,000, I see 1,000 there. So I'm wondering if something is broken here. There's 1,000. Apparently I just had to break and remake the connection. And let's label these. There we go. So now we know what these are. It's too bad I don't have a way to put a bigger icon out here. Nothing else is really important. I mean, I could monitor to make sure I've got iron, but that's not, not really necessary. These two will float up and down. The conditions that I'm using. So Covarex, I will enable Covarex whenever we have less than 100 hot nuggets. And I will enable the centrifuge when we have less than 1900. So we have quite a lot of cold nuggets because we were churning those boys out. I mean, man, we were going like crazy on those. So it'll be a while before we use the centrifuge again. But this number will slowly decrease while we make fuel and deliver it. And when it gets low, we'll run these machines a little bit. And every once in a while, we will dip into the cold nuggets. And realistically, this is going to last us a long, long time. So that goes into the train where we're going to be sending the fuel cells out, and we're going to be getting back the spent fuel cells. And I have a whole bunch in my inventory that I can just drop. In fact, let's drop them somewhere they're going to be useful. I guess a yellow. I could put them in there. Yeah, okay. That works. So let's head to uranium processing and let's watch the condition here. So it immediately triggered because we don't have any spent fuel cells and we had at least 100 normal fuel cells. In fact, we have 1,000 of them. So I'm going to add some more weight conditions. I'm going to say inactivity. No. Let's just say that we have to wait at least 30 seconds with those two conditions set, and wait at least 30 seconds. And down here, I'm also going to say, and time passed. Each one of these. So now this will release the train from the power station if we offload all the uranium fuel cells, so we go back and get more, or if we have at least 100 spent fuel cells, we'll go back and deliver those. And remember, our fuel cell usage is 200 seconds on these guys. So every 200 seconds, we're going to get 10. So every 2,000 seconds, this train's going to move. Now that tells me that we could take this cargo and use it to fuel other nuclear power plants. So we could stripe them out here and have each one be connected to the next one by their roboports, and it would be nice if all the roboports were powered from here, because there is the chance that at some point all of our nuclear reactors would go down, and maybe one wouldn't be enough. So I may need to work out a way to deliver fuel that doesn't require power at the power plant. That may mean using burner inserters. Gosh, I wonder how long a burner inserter would run. Yow. Okay, the key thing is that it's the steam plants. So this power grid here is the one that I don't want. So look at the power. What we would need is for this power line to be powering this stuff in the middle without having this power line connect to it. That may require a redesign of the plant somewhat, because is I think if we move these guys all the way down to here, okay, so from here, that isolates us from above. The downside is I may be counting on the heat transfer capacity of these lines, so that may not be good. These have to be adjacent, so it may or may not be possible to isolate my main power. So in the long run, when I do if I had 20 of these guys, it may very well be that I would just have to have a cutoff switch, so that if I lost power, I could cut the power plants for the rest of the factory until the solar power got the fuel rods inserted again. So let's think in terms of doing that when we set up our 20 wide. Okay, so for now we can just tile these across. We don't need the train to do much. We can get 20 of these and the train will still keep them happy. I mean, you see how long the train is going to stand here. It's going to be, 2,000 seconds. Yeah, that's a while. The other thing is that I am getting away from this thing here, the pumps, the offshore pumps. The offshore pumps that have to be lined up on a perfectly straight border, which has to be landfill because you don't see perfectly straight borders, which means you have to take a ragged edge and landfill all of this. And I mentioned in the video that I may in fact be deleting or editing, I mentioned that I added some add-ons. I added an add-on that allows me to pick up landfill, and I've never tried that. So what happens if I right-click? That works. So now you can right-click and pick up landfill the same way that you right-click and pick up the... Oh, come on. Okay, so I can pick up landfill after I place it, but I can't pick up old landfill. That's fine. So the first thing I did was I loaded the add-on that allows me to pick up landfill that I've placed. That's great. The second thing I did was this little widget up in the upper left-hand corner, which modifies a blueprint so that when you stamp it down, it stamps down landfill under everything. And I think that means I'm going to have to stamp it down once to get the landfill out there, and then later on, after all the landfill is built, I'll have to go back and stamp it down again. And of course, some of these are so large that my bots may not be able to reach the whole thing. I mean, if I stamp down a whole bunch of power plants, I would have to get all of the roboports done first, so robots could get in and plant the landfill. That kind of sucks. I mean, it's better than what we've got, but it's still not good enough. So the last thing I did was I installed an old add-on, a new version of it, called Stone Wells, deep water well. These things right here, you put them anywhere, and they're the same as a offshore pump, same capacity. They are bigger. I believe it's either 3x3 or 4x4. They are 5x5. So that means that I could use these out here instead of the offshore pump and not have to worry about water. Which means I can place my nuclear factories, or my nuclear power station, anywhere I want and use well water to feed it. Which is really good. The downside is that I do need to have an inflow of the of the fuel. So the goal there is then to have a station like this. So we're making some stuff and have this feed a whole bunch of nuclear power facilities. And this one is just fine. It's kind of long range. I mean, yeah, we're training it over there. So we either run a train, or we have it close enough for bots, or we have it close enough for belts, or we co-locate it. I mean, you find some place with iron and crude oil and uranium, and you just put it all there. Again, it gets a little bit bigger if you have to do it all self-contained. So I could do some self-contained down here. That might not be a bad thing. Well, obviously we've got iron here, and we've got, we've got sulfur. Where'd it go? Yeah, we've got sulfur. We don't need a whole lot of sulfur for this. Literally, we need like 500 sulfur per minute for 20 nuclear power facilities. So we could tap off of the sulfur here, we could tap off of the iron up here, and we could do the entire nuclear power for this factory down here. And here is our uranium. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So let's get ourselves a little more space here. Come on. Drop this down. And Mr. Red can go build. Okay, and the rest of this is going to be kind of boring. So I'm going to make this a super short one. I will look at editing the previous one. It may turn into a skip, so part 28 may never appear. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what we see. And we will come back when I have built the nuclear power down here using that uranium and that iron and that sulfur and that oil. It'll go in here somewhere, and it'll use, if it needs water, it's got water. The other thing I will want to do is take this water from here, pull apart that entire line, and just have local water wells. And that's a wrap.